minute, Jack. This is a friendly celebration.
I don't much like the way you celebrate.
So welcome, America. This is Don Woolley and 4 Men in America. And yesterday we had 3 of our 4 members of our panel on, Ken Bennett, Paul Fitch, along with myself, Don Woolley. And today we've invited Jeff Hooch to join us. He was not available yesterday, but he's going to join us today to give us his input on the president's performance his first 100 days. How he things he likes the best about him, things that he didn't like that he did, if there's anything, and what his grade would be for him. So yesterday, our panel, that when we voted on it and talked about it, we gave President Trump an A-, and I'm particularly pleased with what he's done on the border, and of course not pleased with what the courts are doing, but we have faith that that'll be fixed in the long run, so and not too long. So anyway, one of the things we talked about yesterday, we also discussed tariffs, and Ken Bennett brought up this article about tariffs, and I'm going to bring that on the screen now. It's a article by Tanvi Ratna, and she wrote on Substack, and the title of the article is Trump's Tariff Gambit: Debt, Power, and the Art of Strategic Disruption. And we're going to get into this deeply next week. We're going to talk about tariffs, and we hope you can join us. We'll upload the video next Friday, which I believe will be May the 9th. So look for it then on YouTube and Rumble. And I'll stop talking, and we'll pause for a moment and wait till Jeff gets on with us. So thanks, everybody, and we'll see you soon. And we are back, everybody, and I'm going to admit Jeff now on the screen, and we'll begin the discussion. Good morning, Jeff Hooch. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine. We're fine. We're recording, so I sort of gave a little introduction before you came on. And,
okay.
And I referenced an article that Ken mentioned yesterday about tariffs, and I hope that we can discuss all that next week. So I emailed that to all the guys, and if you could take a look at that, and then we can talk about it next week. It's a pretty interesting
Absolutely.
article. Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably the most, or one of the most controversial, at least in the conservative circles, about what to do there.
Right. Yeah. The name of the person that wrote it is Tanvi Ratna. She wrote it on Substack, and I showed a sample already on the screen before we got started. But anyway,
Great.
So yesterday, Jeff, we talked about President Trump's first 100 days. And
yes, sorry I missed.
we gave him a sort of a panel grade of A-, B+ to A-. We settled on A-. We understand that Trump is Trump, and that the rock'em sock'em robot theory, you know, he may have, how to put this delicately, you know, in some things he's not so subtle about doing that may may have offended somebody or done something to not advance his cause, but that's Trump, and it's sort of a catch-22 that you got to live with him. So, but
Well, if you let a bull into a china shop, every so often it's going to knock down one of your favorite statues.
oh yeah, that's right. And you know, if it wasn't Trump, none of this stuff would be getting done. You know, so you kind of have to live with what you get, and I think we're all pretty happy. We were all ecstatic about the border, but I'll let you comment on what you like, what he's done, some things that you may not like what he's done, and you can finish up with the grade, and I'll give the floor to you.
Well, Don, yeah, sorry for my absence yesterday and glad to have the opportunity. I mean, my whole observation is this. Thank goodness for Donald Trump overall. But if we had President Trump and other leaders more grounded in the historical aspects of America's founding and the Constitution, I think it would help direct their paths and our paths. But I also understand he is the man in the arena. And as Teddy Roosevelt wrote, you know, be careful about how you criticize the man in the arena, because those of us who have lesser stations need to be careful, because how would we do? And so my comments are not meant to be, you know, too critical, because I think most of what he's doing is great. But at the same time, I do think we need to comment and speak out, lest we be condemned for not having our greatest allegiance to the nation and the Constitution and to a man himself, which I am not. I'm grateful for Trump, but my first allegiance is to, you know, God and the Constitution, our nation as a whole, what I think should be done. We need to remember that Washington said, you know, it's when we need to just take you know, convenient steps to handle issues that are outside constitutional authority is the downfall of nations. Because once we start to do that, there's really no end of that. So I'll just preface my comments that way. So first, let me start on things that I give President Trump A+s on, no question about it. And that would be, you know, men and women's sport. He's been very clear on that, and the transgender issues, okay? We do not need the tail wagging the dog. This is something that I have decided that it is really useless debating with anybody who thinks a man can become a woman, because they are not mature enough, smart enough, experienced enough to know. I mean, you know, as Jordan Peterson says, even, you know, amoebas can tell the difference between, you know, the different sexes and know which way to go on that. So it really isn't. So it's a fact. It's something that shouldn't even be debated. And, you know, just a week ago, you had Masters Swimming Nationals allow a 45 to 49-year-old male swim in the women's category and win like 7 events. And the fact that this is still going on, and their own rules in master swimming is to not allow that to happen unless they've proved to have their testosterone not over a certain amount and all these things. And the person didn't do it. So it's like, live up to your own rules. It's wrong in the first place, but it's pathetic. And this male also competes in like CrossFit and bike riding and rowing and just crushing everybody everywhere is like an egomaniac. It's just crazy. But so I think that's great. Selecting a cabinet, A+. I mean, just going for the best people possible, not trying to do what he did in the his first administration and making everybody happy. I think it's great. Crushing DEI, A+, okay? Just going after it in the military, not accepting it within our university campuses is just great. Trying to abolish this anti-Jewish sentiment that has been allowed to creep. I mean, why do we allow this? It's just crazy. And the last administration is just brain dead on this. Like, we're okay with that? Are you crazy? I mean, it's as self-evident as the men and women's sport issue. So cracking down on universities, A+, deregulation efforts, A+. I mean, look at all these positive things that are going. military reorganization. Now, I give them an A or A minus there. That's my first A or A minus there, because I think there could be some more explanation of why certain generals are being let go. Not that he has to, but it's a good idea to let people know, hey, why is X, Y, and Z being relieved? There have been some complaints, I'm very close to the military, that maybe some of the baby has been thrown out with the bath water on that, and maybe some good people let go. I do not know enough to comment, with 100% certainty there, but I'm giving them an A or A minus because that's the perspective that some that I know have.
Yeah, and I think his new head of the Joint Chiefs, Raising Cane, probably had a lot more input in some of that too.
Right.
Yeah. So we'll
and
see.
I know people who know Raising Cane. Like I know a person in Tucson that we've had present at my nonprofit that Raising Cane used to work for this particular individual, and they speak extremely highly of him. So I do have confidence that that is good. Securing the border, A++, I mean, has totally proven that the previous administration was full of it when they said they couldn't, and to just hammer on all these aspects that the Republicans should do. Extraditing illegals. Now, this is where we start to get into where I think the messaging could be clearer. I'm giving them a B on this, extraditing illegals. I think the execution of it is an A. But the problem is we can't just execute without having the backing of a supermajority of the American people, which I think we do. But we also have to have a plan in place of how to deal with the courts and how not to just win over the courts or barely win, but to crush them. And so a plan needs to be in place where it's not just the executive branch stepping up, but it's Congress. And
right.
And that's why I give a B, because, it's kind of like, the World War I theory of warfare. You're just on the front line, and that's the front, and all your troops are there. Well, the Germans came up with Blitzkrieg, and Schwarzkopf kind of perfected that when we went in, in the Gulf War many years ago in the early 90s, where it's a wide and broad front, and you can't think of what's just ahead of you right there. You've got to be wide and deep. And being wide and deep here means using all your assets. And that means reining in the judiciary through Congress. And, there's this big fight right now of what constitutes due process for illegals, either criminal illegals, and all illegals are criminal, by the way, but those who have committed crimes, right. Especially violent crimes once they're in the United States. And so I give a B there because you can't just think front line, and it should have been really expected that this lawfare, which is not new, was going to happen, and that they would use the 5th and 14th Amendments against the administration and executive branch for doing this. And so they need a deeper understanding of the Constitution and the protocols necessary to support what they're doing. And that involves Congress. And Congress needs to be ready to go, but Congress is not just months behind what the president's doing. I think they're years behind, but we don't have years to catch up.
Right. And they just took 2 weeks off, so.
Yeah, we've got to do it now.
Yeah.
I mean, Trump is driving the boat and they're barely hanging on with their skis.
Yeah, did you see Johnson the other day, Jeff, Mike Johnson, when they came back in session again on, I think it was Monday, they had a little press conference. He did say some encouraging things. He stated that we know what's going on with the courts, and that he said we have the power to abolish them or defund them.
Right, rein them in.
He's saying the right things. So when I heard it, I kind of looked at the TV screen and I said, well, now it's time to do it. Yes.
Well, no, yeah.
Let's go to work.
That's reactionary.
Yeah, right.
But it's hard to blame because I'm not the man in the arena. They've got so
Sure.
much going on.
Yeah.
And this is one of my criticisms, is that, there's so much to do. And if everything's a priority, nothing is a priority.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
we have the risk I'm a Civil War historian and buff. We have the risk of splitting our forces too wide, and that gives the enemy a real chance of counterattacking.
Well, they are.
If you don't bring,
they are focusing right now on the big, what they call it, the big bill.
Right. Well,
so that's important too, and we understand that. So.
Well, and so look, sometimes splitting the forces work, like Lee at Chancellorsville, and sometimes it's almost disastrous, like Lee at Antietam. I mean, that almost got totally crushed. And so there's a risk, and it depends on how the other side reacts and what forces they bring to bear. I mean, so if the left was smart, they would focus on one or two issues, and it's very difficult. If we're involved in 1,000 issues, it's hard to defend. We're trying to defend everything and do everything. And it's very difficult. So I think it is time for Trump to, and I think he's realizing this, but I think if he had realized this in November, instead of just focusing on what his administration and the executive branch would do, but working harder, and maybe my perspective's wrong, again, with the legislative branch saying, hey, look, these are the executive orders I'm going to make, and this is the legislation you need to pass immediately to buoy up these executive orders, A, so they're not temporary, and B, so they're not found unconstitutional. So an example is the illegal immigration issues. If the Congress, which has given the naturalization powers under Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, stepped up and said, this is what we need to do to clarify these laws, then that's what we need to do. And the same thing with the tariff issues, which we'll get into a little bit. So so that's why I give a B on that, because we don't need just a frontline strategy to exporting these illegals, which I am very in favor of, but we need depth and we need backup by Congress, and we don't need it yesterday, we need it now. Because these on the left, they say, oh, they're doing extra constitutional things if they're messing with the courts. No, they're not. Read Federalist 78. The judicial branch is supposed to be the weakest. Read, Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. Read Article 3 that gives Congress the power to establish all the federal courts underneath the Supreme Court, and they're the ones that give them the powers. So you could take away not only just the money, but you could strip them of their authority to rule on immigration issues.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
and they
could do that.
And Congress created the immigration courts to take that responsibility away from all of the other ones. So
right.
So just in that aspect, they're usurping their authority.
Yes, and you could restrict those rights. Now, look, we can have a big argument. I saw an article the other day about John Bingham, the congressman from Indiana or Ohio, who was the front runner of the 14th Amendment, which a lot on the left are saying is we can't, it doesn't say citizens of the United States, but persons within the United States. However, and Bingham wanted that to apply to all the states and everybody here. But Bingham, even though he was one who pushed it, the people who passed that bill rejected his idea that the 14th Amendment should apply to all the Bill of Rights to the states, and also rejected that, persons meant just anybody within the United States. And so we need to go back when they say founder's intent, but what the left is doing is saying this is what Bingham wanted, but it's not what everybody else wanted. He was in the minority in passing it with that intent. So we need to have the Paul Harvey rest of the stories and use them. But we don't know it if we don't study it. So handling the courts, I would give either a B, B minus, or maybe C. Now, the reason it's not higher is because I think there's a lack of understanding of history and how to handle the courts. And I don't think you can just ignore them, but I think Lincoln provides a good example of how not to ignore them, but proceed with what he wanted to do. And I also think Clinton and Biden provide examples of how to say that you're complying with court orders, but get around what they're doing anyway. And also using Congress to help them. So I give a B or C there. And I think it's because of lack of knowledge, even with his upper level advisors on American history and using that to teach. Passing the big, beautiful bill, which I think should be more of a priority, certainly a B because it hasn't been done yet. And the reason it hasn't been done yet is there's a lot of other areas we're trying to attack on and make progress. And it's hard to do everything. But if that doesn't pass, we're in big trouble.
Yeah, that's right. The midterms will be a problem. And right now, somebody said that they'd like to have it done by the 4th of July, but Mike Johnson said the other day he wants it done by the end of May. So
get it done. There's no reason to wait there.
They can't take any more. They just can't take any more wasted time off. They really got to put their pencil to the paper and get it done.
Yeah, a Doge, I'd give an A- or B+. Now I'm 100% in favor of Doge, and I'd give the Doge efforts itself an A+. But the reason I'm giving the administration an A- or B+ is the administration hasn't explained to the general public, because all I hear is, I never elected Elon Musk. What's he doing in there? And look, okay, guys, there's a lot of administrative bureaucrats you didn't elect. This comes under the purview of the executive branch, and the executive branch has powers to deputize and delegate. It's kind of like saying a sheriff's deputy. I didn't elect that sheriff. It's a deputy. It has full power, authorized constitutional power to make recommendations and do certain things that the president can decide to do or not.
And hire the people he wants.
Yes, so there's been a lack of education to the general public of how that is constitutional. So specifically in educational, that's why I give it a lower. And because of that, Elon has been branded, and it's hurt. It's hurt Elon Musk, and no good deed goes unpunished. And the administration, in my opinion, should be much more forceful of telling the public what a patriot he is, that he's doing this for free, that he's bringing in his expertise, because we can't continue on the road we're going down. And I just think in a level of fairness to the American people and our children, and taking them out of the bondage of debt we're creating for them, I think they could have done a lot better in explaining that. So that's why maybe B on something like that, B+. And the administration now coming around and saying and explaining to the American people what is in the budget ministerial considered, and there's Supreme Court decisions on this. What does the president have discretionary? Does he have to spend money on this, or is it discretionary? And so you have administrative duties where some laws are passed that he has to carry out. And there's other administrative duties, or not administrative, duties that are called discretionary. And he needs to better really explain to the American people. So I hope I'm not going on too long. I still got more. Are we okay,
No,
Don?
you're good. You're good. Yeah, you're fine.
Okay, so then I start to go foreign, foreign relations and things. So the Israeli-Hamas conflict, I'd give President Trump an A. I wish I could give him an A+, but I think to really, and again, I don't know what's going on, but my perspective is that if you really wanted to have a stamp on our foreign policy to let everybody know we weren't messing around, including Iran and Russia, you would have come in and immediately crushed Hamas. And that would be something to really say, look, there's a new sheriff in town. Right now, that hasn't happened, Don. I mean, true. And we've had 100 days to do it. And there were promises made that we're going to take care of that. Now, again, I only know what I know, but the visuals aren't as good as they could be there. And so in Iran, I'm given an A-, B+. The jury's still out because we may need to hit them hard. But I think the stance, there's no reason Iran needs nuclear power at all. They're a big oil and gas power, and to have these the equipment to make a bomb, whether it's a 3% grade or higher type thing, we don't need them within 2 weeks, and we know they're not responsible enough to have it. So it's like a convicted violent felon not being able to have legal guns in America. They are a violent felon that does not have, even though they're an independent sovereign nation, would be foolish for the world to be able to allow them to have it, because they already have stated their goals: to get rid of Israel, to perpetuate, their jihad, and it's just not smart. So I think they should have been dealt with more harshly. The Houthis, I'd given. Oh, go ahead, Don.
No, I was going to say, with regards to Iran, Russia has signed an agreement with Iran, and supposedly in that agreement, which I think Witkoff talked to Putin about, so we know about it. The Russians have said that they will not let Iran have a nuclear weapon. Okay, they didn't say no to nuclear power, but they said no to a nuclear weapon. So they're not going to allow them to have enough material to make a nuclear weapon. So that's kind of the background with Russia. That's going on with Russia right now. So.
Well, I like that Trump, he's not a warmonger. He wants peace. That's very evident. And I respect and really love that, because we have too many people ready to push the button. Yeah. But that's the one place we shouldn't be scared to go in and take care of.
Oh, yeah, sure. I agree.
And swiftly and harshly. And so I think we kowtow to that a little bit too much. The Ukrainian-Russia affair, I give him a B or a C. Because there were high expectations there. I do think he has been played by Putin. I am not saying that Putin, look, this is a gray area, right?
Yeah.
This is a gray area. And I'm not pro-Russia, and I am more pro-Ukraine, but the West have done their things to help acerbate the problem there. Yeah. And we need to go at it with open eyes. And I've got friends on both sides of the position. I mean, you listen to guys like Tucker Carlson, and his pro-Russia view, and then on the other side, guys like Ben Shapiro or whoever more on the Ukrainian. And I think there's eyes wide open. We need to go into this saying, look, there's problems on both sides, but we need the war to end. And it's not going to end if we say, you guys figure it out or we're out of this, because that's what Russia wants. I think we're going to have some kind of stalemate, North-South Korea type of a armistice, or this may continue for a long time.
Yeah, that's right.
What was the group's consensus?
I'm sorry. We didn't talk much about it other than. I'm on the side that I feel strongly. I just don't want to give any more weapons or money to Ukraine, because I think Zelensky's a crook, and as soon as he doesn't want to end the war, because as soon as it ends, he's going to have to leave Ukraine because he'll be assassinated by the Nazis. So I think the mistake Trump has made is he's probably listened to General Kellogg too much. And Kellogg has kind of a 2-year-old view of the whole thing, and he's not. I think Witkoff has the real picture of where Russia's at and where we should do. And I think one of the things that's happened in the last few days, is they moved Mike Waltz into the UN position as the UN ambassador, because he's been pushing the Kellogg side of the whole thing. And I don't think Tulsi Gabbard, and I don't think Witkoff, and I don't think Marco Rubio are all on board with that, what Kellogg was preaching. And the plan they've been presenting to Russia has been this Kellogg plan that he kind of wrote out in April of 2022 or 23, I don't remember which, but
give us the highlights of that.
Well, it doesn't take into any account of Russia's grievances. Russia
Right,
keeps
yeah.
talking about root causes, and it ignores the root cause of the problem, which they think has been the Banderas, the Nazis going after the Russian people in those areas. And after two agreements they had, Minsk I and Minsk II, that were violated by Ukraine, and of course Ukraine blamed Russia that they violated them. Putin got tired of it and he went in to protect those people. So that's why he called it a special military operation. So that's
Well,
kind of
the
where
big
we're at.
thing is Putin just using that as a pretense to do what he really wants to do. And there's some really good writings that kind of take the mask off
Yeah.
of one of his closest advisors about how they really want to be the dominant power, all the way to the Atlantic. And, that starts with the overthrowing of Ukraine. So I guess the big decision that we need to make in the West is, are we okay? Because if we stop giving them weapons, Europe is not ready to step up into our place. So if we stop giving Ukraine weapons, are we okay with Russia just taking the Ukraine?
Yeah. I personally, this is just a gut feel. I don't think they want all of Ukraine. I think they just want the 4 regions. Of course, I could be wrong. I'm not in the middle of all this, and I think Whitcock believes that. So, a lot of the Ukraine that he wants is full of Russian-speaking people anyway that feel their allegiances to Russia. But
That's
some of those
true.
some of those western areas that are close to Poland and around there, they don't. So I don't know if he wants the whole country.
That's where I differ a little bit. And because we saw how much even some of the Russian-speaking towns fought against Putin coming in. Now, some didn't, but some did in the Russian-speaking areas and still wanted to stay part of Ukraine. So that's a split issue. And in my opinion, with the information I have now, and look, there's areas that I say I am an expert on, okay? And the Constitution would be one, and decision. I'm not claiming to be a Russia-Ukraine expert,
Right.
and I'm not. But my perspective is that Putin does want all of Ukraine.
That's possible.
I really do, and I think he would take it if he could get it. And I think the only thing that's going to stop him is if the U.S. So I just think it comes down to that. But you may be totally right. My perspective may be off. And if we're willing to cede all of Ukraine to Russia, then I think we stop giving weapons. I certainly want peace, but I don't think it's peace at all costs. And so that's what we really need to decide.
Yeah.
And,
well, hopefully the people that I know are a lot smarter than I am, the Witkoffs and the Gabbards and some of those people that he has put in his inner circle can figure this out, because I think he's got the group to do it. So
I hope so, but we've been told by experts before a lot of stuff, and sorry if I kind of squirm and squeam a little bit when that's brought up.
No, that's okay.
But we'll move on. So I brought up a lot of the A pluses first. So I definitely have more A pluses than other. But the tariff war, right now is too early to judge.
Yeah,
but I'm giving it a C right now.
Yeah.
Now it has to be done. So I think A on the effort in identifying what has to be done. However, I think you've got to check your stockpiles of what we need before we declare a war on the entire world.
Well, we do make all of our own toilet paper, so people don't
We're
go
good
rush out
there.
and buy a bunch of toilet paper because we don't import any toilet paper.
People jumping out of a plane, they descend a certain amount of feet, and that's not what kills them, it's the rate of descent.
That's right.
So, the rate of trying to realign the world on this, I'm just thinking, again, we could have split our forces a little bit too much, because I think this has taken a lot of wind out of his sails in the administration, which otherwise could have been put into getting the big deal done, getting that passed first, getting Ukraine-Russia war, because we have time. We've got a little bit of time to do this. And maybe going after China first, or this, that, or the other. But I think what this has done is exposed our vulnerabilities as a nation to what we produce here. And if China did want to play hardball and hold their breath longer than us, which I do think they possibly have the capability of doing because they're a dictatorship. And we don't seem to have the staying power in the Western countries that dictatorships have for obvious reasons. So again, it does have to be handled, but not sure. I don't know if that was well thought out.
Yeah, well, read that article, because it's really the one I referred to. It's really an excellent article, and if you watch this video later, I'm going to show a brief part of that article so everybody can see it, and it's very interesting. And she has a real interesting take on the whole thing, and it's not at all negative. She points out some really good things.
Right.
So we got to let it all evolve now.
It does.
And this, it's our rock'em sock'em robot theory, Jeff. That we, the new.
Keep them on the heels.
Keep them on their heels.
Which I definitely endorse. But we've got to think about the next steps. The one thing I do have confidence in Trump is he is not an ideologue. He's a pragmatist.
Yeah.
And that, hopefully he will be nimble enough to do the right thing and not need to double down just because he made a decision to prove he was right, but to be smart enough to maneuver. I think he is.
Yeah, I think he is too. I think he's making some decisions on the tariff thing. I think he's looking at the whole thing daily and trying to be very agile about what he's doing with every country. And so if he gets a few of these deals made, and once that news breaks, I think that'll all calm down and calm everybody down. The market's calmed down this week quite a lot. So
my other comment there, though, is I do believe this is now in all these other areas. I am supporting this administration and their executive powers. In the tariff issues, one can believe he is even doing the right things, which I think overall need to be done. It's just the rate that we're doing it. I don't think is very smart. But I know there's some other issues about interest rates and all these other national debt and tariffs. I understand some of those issues. However, I don't know if he really thought those through enough. But constitutionally, I do think he's out of bounds. I mean, I think, again, the first sentence in Article 1, Section 8 is about import-export duties, taxes, and that's under the purview of Congress. And I don't think we want this precedent for a president on either side to have this power. I just don't. So that is my take, even though it could be something that needs to be done. Congress needs to lead the way. And we have emergency powers to be able to give to the president like this. But this is an overextension of executive powers, in my opinion. And I think Congress needs to come back and either stamp their approval on it or restrict his powers on this. So Canada, the way we've handled that, I'd give a D, okay? I lived in Canada for a couple years in Quebec City. I know the French up there, the Quebecois. My grandfather lived outside in Kingston, near Toronto. We've got family connections to Canada and Canadian friends down here in Tucson. And, the emotional response and the electing of the wrong prime minister up there, I do think is a direct result of what Trump did. And these are unintended consequences, but it's real. And I don't think it's positive. I do not. So anyway, that's why I don't think that was very good.
Foreign relations.
China.
That would come under foreign relations with Canada, right?
Right. And just, Trump gave them a reason to rally as a country, and and identify, and we just had other ways to make inroads there.
Yeah, and you know, when Trudeau quit, the Conservatives had like a 30-point lead up there, and what they did, the mistake that they made is they jumped right onto the side of the libs in talking about Trump, when they should have just been talking about their country and saying things like, listen, we'll work with Trump, we'll negotiate a good trade deal. You know, they should have, the Conservatives should have ignored the nationalism and just,
Right.
But they didn't. They jumped right on board with them. And when everybody went to vote, they said, well, what's the difference? There's no difference between these people, right?
They did not know how to parry the thrust.
Yeah, that's right.
But the thrust shouldn't have been made in the first place.
Yeah. Well, I think I think that all came about because he wanted to poke Trudeau, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Poke the bear. And it's not that Trudeau doesn't deserve it.
Oh, I know, he's
or
terrible.
Canada in the first place for not doing enough
Right.
on their borders
Yeah.
and the fentanyl crisis.
Exactly.
But, however, I do not think, and this again could be perspective, but we're having more problems on the southern border. It's an order of magnitude more problems in from my perspective and what I've read on the southern border with the cartels, with the amount of fentanyl coming in than we are in Canada.
Yeah.
Now it's still serious and significant,
Yeah.
but I don't think you give the belt to the same child, you know, who tried to drown, you know, your younger daughter, and the other one that just had a little spat with them. You don't, you know.
The good news about the southern border is that Mexico has, you know, they have come out and said, listen, we're going to work. The lady down there, the new president down there, she's working with Trump. She's putting troops up there. She's doing Remain in Mexico. You know, she's working with him, and that's the position that Pierre, whatever his name is up in Canada, the conservative leader, should have taken. You know, right away. Yeah. So go ahead. So what's your overall grade? What do you think your overall grade is?
So I think overall grade's got to be about what you guys came up with.
B plus, A minus.
B plus, A minus, and there's a lot to be proud of and support Trump on, but it would be remiss of us to not try to correct or to speak out where we think there's areas that either A, he's overstepping his constitutional authority, or B, he's still within his constitutional authority but making missteps. But again, I don't necessarily always defer to the experts, because that doesn't necessarily lead us. And their perspectives, I have also found out, even though they should be more informed, are thwarted a little bit by politics or whatever else may be. And we learned that during COVID, just hands down.
Yeah.
So sometimes they have information that would change our perspectives, and sometimes they don't.
So what do you think about? I wanted to bring this thing up before we stop here. Is a judge the other day, she came out with a ruling that the Border Patrol couldn't take illegal aliens into custody crossing the border unless they had a warrant.
No.
You know, how
that's
do you,
not even close.
I know. How do you handle something like that? That's just ignorance of the whole law.
Yeah. Well, look, anybody who knows that has tried to come into this country, even citizens that come into this country, you can get your laptop looked at. There are different rules that have been long established that do not require due process when you're coming in and out of the country.
Right.
You may agree or disagree with that, but that has been a long established fact.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes those powers, not rights, those powers delegated to the Border Patrol or to customs agents are abused. And I've seen those abused at the southern border coming in. But overall, we've established that you don't have those rights as American citizens or illegals at the border. So that is absolutely nonsense.
Yeah.
Crazy talk.
Crazy talk.
And again, if Congress wants to change it, that's fine.
Yeah.
But that's a non-starter.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that they have to have. So, okay, well, thank you, Jeff. I'm gonna I'm going to end the program here, but if you'd stay on for a minute, I want to ask you a couple of questions. And thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks, Jeff,
Thank
for
you.
coming on and our little extra session here. We'll include this in our video this week. And
Supplement.
yeah, it'll be our part 2. We have part 1, 100 days, part 2, 100 days. So